Meghan Markle had a fairy tale rise from game show cleavage girl to princess, and then she started a $1 billion media empire, and it's all coming crashing down. It's not just because the stuff she puts out sounds about as much fun as having your teeth pulled. Her podcast Archetypes is about the stereotypes and labels that hold women back. You might want to listen to it if your work doesn't send you on enough gender studies training courses. And she's emblematic of the hypocrisy that's also destroying wokeism. She weaponizes victimhood, but she is definitely not a victim. She moans about colonialism and white privilege. Listen, you're a princess. There is literally nobody more privileged than you. You can legally eat a swan and live in a castle protected by men in big furry hats like your Lord Farquaad. Harry and Meghan push the trendy idea that Britain and the British Empire is racist to its core, but they're happy to take money from it and wear Jubilee medals, and they still want to act like royals and travel around the Commonwealth. I mean, pick a lane. She also says that we need to be kind, while she apparently bullies underlings out of their jobs. She lectures us on climate change, then jumps in a private jet to a Katy Perry concert. She complains that she's discriminated against for being black, when she didn't even think she was black herself until it became trendy to be black. She even compared herself to Nelson Mandela. And she moans about privacy and then makes a lot of money from completely exposing her own life and intruding on the royal family's privacy. It's like a porn star moaning that somebody looked at her cleavage. And most of all, she turned Harry from the fun royal, the squaddy who used to get drunk with the lads and then shoot up the Taliban from his helicopter, into just another tedious woke millennial lecturing us on unconscious bias and systemic racism. Meghan even revealed her origin story, how a lack of friends at school drove her to become an activist, but it seems to have driven her to become a monster who falls out with everyone: family, business partners, Hollywood, and the public. If everyone else is a problem, maybe you're the problem, Meghan. Anyway, before we dive in, a quick message from my sponsor for this video, MyHeritage. If you watch my videos, you're probably interested in family and heritage and how your ancestors helped build this country and invade other ones. When I started using MyHeritage, I had no idea how wild my family history would turn out to be. First up, let's talk about my great-grandfather, Harold. He was staunchly conservative. We're talking suit and tie every day, hand on heart at dawn, flag-waving conservative. During the Cold War, he was actively involved in anti-communist efforts. Apparently, he even wrote pamphlets titled things like "Down with the Red Menace." I found one of these pamphlets through MyHeritage and I couldn't stop laughing. He's just like me, but with pamphlets instead of shouty YouTube videos. And then there's my great-great-aunt Evelyn. She worked for racehorse stables and had a very particular set of skills that included being a barnyard masturbator. She would excite the horses to climax and then collect their emissions in a leather jerkin for the purposes of insemination. Despite being of humble origins, she was a pioneer in the field of animal wanking, famed for her soft palms and steady eye contact. Here's the thing, these discoveries aren't just entertaining, they're meaningful. They make you realise that your ancestors were real people with real struggles, dreams, and yes, even scandals. The platform is incredible. You start with what you know, maybe just your parents or grandparents' names, and MyHeritage helps you fill in the blanks. They've got over 28 billion historical records at your fingertips. They have this amazing feature called Instant Discoveries. One click and boom, an entire branch of your family tree is added. I decided to collaborate with MyHeritage because learning about my family history helped understand the bizarre tapestry of the people who made me. So sign up for the MyHeritage Complete Plan today and start discovering your history. And the best part, you get a 14-day free trial. Just use my link, it's below. And hey, if your great aunt used to wank off farmyard animals as well, let me know, we can start a club. Anyway, back to the chronicle of hypocrisy that is the rise and fall of Meghan Markle. She was born into a middle-class family in Los Angeles, but she aspired to stardom. She scratched around in minor roles, appearing as the briefcase girl on Deal or No Deal, which she said made her feel objectified. Yes, you're literally an object on that show. Your job is to look attractive and open a briefcase while smiling, and well done on fulfilling your objectives, but if you want to be valued for your intelligence, why not study to be a brain surgeon or lawyer? Probably because it's a lot harder to study to be a brain surgeon or lawyer than it is to smile and look pretty. Anyway, she did act as a lawyer in her biggest role in TV show Suits in 2011. If you listen to her now, you'd think it was an epoch-defining role and a strident leap forward for global feminism, but in reality it was pretty much the same job, looking hot on TV, just with no briefcase this time. With Hollywood stardom eluding her, she segued into the next best way for women to get rich and famous, marrying someone famous, and then moaning about stuff. And she decided to kick the activism up a notch. She wrote an essay about the stigma around menstruation in the developing world and wrote messages of support on bananas for crack-addicted prostitutes that they can read and feel inspired by before they shove them up their arse for money. She's always been annoying apparently. She led a campaign against a sexist dish soap ad when she was just 11 years old that she frequently refers to in her speeches to the United Nations.
UN Secretary General, Executive Director Pumzile, thank you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am tremendously honored to be UN Women's Advocate for political participation and leadership. I am proud to be a woman and a feminist. When I was just 11 years old, I unknowingly and somehow accidentally became a female advocate. See, I had been in school watching a TV show in elementary school, and this commercial came on with the tagline for this dishwashing liquid, and the tagline said, "Women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans." 2 boys from my class said, "Yeah, that's where women belong. In the kitchen." I went home and I told my dad what had happened. And he encouraged me to write letters. So I did, to the most powerful people I could think of. Now, my 11-year-old self worked out that if I really wanted someone to hear me, well, then I should write a letter to the First Lady. So off I went, scribbling away to our First Lady at the time, Hillary Clinton.
I guess this is actually kind of touching. It's nice to see kids getting involved in politics because they usually start off lefty and then swing to the right once they get some real world experience and start making some money. But not Meghan, maybe because progressive opinions are expedient in the world of entertainment. She stayed resolutely feminist and activist. Then she met Harry, and it was like when your best mate gets a new girlfriend who wants to make him a better person, and then suddenly he's wearing polo necks and going to Bikram yoga, and he doesn't laugh at sexist jokes anymore. And everyone in Britain was, to be honest, initially delighted that we had a bit of California glamour in the royal family. Man, you should see the women they usually marry. It's like a Dundee nightclub at 3 AM when they turn the lights on. And Harry was the one royal everyone liked because his life wasn't a carefully stage-managed wankfest. He joined the army, he flew a helicopter, he got drunk, he shot terrorists, he did drugs, he wore hilarious costumes. He's a former squaddie who was once filmed using racial language, but he's now repented and now says that the royal family has unconscious bias. Oh, where did you learn that phrase from, Harry, you dope? This is important because it strikes at the heart of woke. When Harry was using racial language, he was speaking affectionately about someone. You could feel the camaraderie between them. When he starts using the woke ordained language and being careful, he's being a vindictive little shit. And Meghan resurrected the tradition of American divorcees breaking up the royal family with a series of moans. She accused the royal family of turning the media against her, of having outmoded protocols that she didn't understand, of not supporting her mental health, and of course, she accused them of racism. Listen, the unspoken contract of being a royal is that you get to be a real-life princess in return for doing your duty, which mostly just involves sitting next to some African oligarch while you watch long, boring dance sequences and not pissing and moaning about it. The Queen knew how to be a royal. Never complain, never explain. But Meghan complained and explained and pissed and moaned about everything. She claims she was forced to wear neutral colours during her time in the palace in order to avoid upstaging or competing with Queen Elizabeth. Oh, what a nightmare having to wear the clothes you willingly choose to wear in every single photo shoot since. Oh, the Queen wouldn't let me dress like Dildo Monkey Buttman while attending royal events. This is racist. And she also didn't curtsy in front of the Queen and then claimed she didn't know. How did she not know? She just married into a royal family without googling what a royal family is? I find that hard to believe. Meghan strikes me as the sort of person who doesn't wander blindly into anything. A resident of Montecito, where she lives now, who ate lunch in the same restaurant as Meghan, said the server told her Meghan had called ahead to ask about the privacy of the seating arrangement. Meghan is the sort of person who actually clicks eject device before pulling out a USB drive. I'm pretty sure she was aware there were some arcane performative rituals associated with the royal family. It sounds like she was a nightmare for palace staff as well. Meghan was accused of contributing to the departure of 2 personal assistants during her time at Kensington Palace. The aides reportedly felt undermined and left their position due to what they described as Meghan's abrasive behaviour, which I'm guessing included listening to music through her phone speaker on the bus and talking loudly at the cinema, maybe starting a fight in a Waffle House over who'd been laying with her man. And Meghan kept banging on about racism. She urged Britain and the Commonwealth to acknowledge the past of colonialism.
It's acknowledging whatever mistakes we've all made, right? So if we look at the Commonwealth, and I know part of the conversation we're going to explore later on is looking at the history of that, you know, it's not even in the big moments, right? It's in the quiet moments where racism and unconscious bias lies, and as you've said, lies and hides and thrives.
And when it comes to sort of institutional and systemic racism, it's there and it stays there because someone somewhere is benefiting from it. Certainly when you look across the Commonwealth, there's no way that we can move forward unless we acknowledge the past. And I think so many people have done such an amazing, incredible job of acknowledging the past and trying to right those wrongs.
Listen, you joined a literal royal family and now you're complaining about colonialism? It's like the Ayatollah Khomeini joining the board of Diageo, then complaining that they sell alcohol. You should be thanking colonialism. How do you think you got that palace and the jewels in your tiara? Also, British colonialism was great. I'm basing that purely on the fact that everyone who says colonialism is bad is a wanker. Also, I like railways and democracy. The truth is, of course, that the British Empire was overall a positive influence in the countries we conquered. I've got a video coming out about why the British Empire was great, so sign up to my Patreon to see that. And Britain, by any measure, isn't racist. The upper echelons of our government is full of brown faces, and there were even more of them under the Tories when Meghan said that Britain was racist. We had an Indian British Prime Minister. And in the Oprah interview, Meghan complained that an unnamed member of the royal family speculated about how dark her son Archie's skin might be. Well, we know it wasn't Prince Philip, because he'd actually give her something to complain about. I'm from a mixed race family, and yeah, skin colour gets commented on, same as hair colour or height or earlobes or any other heritable trait. Yeah, look, I don't have earlobes. I've evolved to jettison unnecessary flesh to make me more streamlined for fighting Chinese robots in the coming war. In the Oprah interview, Meghan also said that her son Archie was denied security by the royals because his skin colour, and it was a safe assumption that him being too brown would be a problem. And Princess Michael of Kent wore a blackamoor brooch to a brunch where Meghan was present, which was apparently a slur to Meghan's African roots. Here's the brooch, and the thing is, these things have always been considered to be a tribute to the people they represent, but being woke is about seeing racism in everything. So Meghan hates the royal family, and she couldn't wait to leave it, but her and Harry are still using the royal titles. Like, if you quit your job at McDonald's in disgust at how you're treated, why would you still insist that people refer to you as McDonald's regional manager? It's not the only pomposity. While they were moaning about colonialism and royalty, they used £2.4 million of British taxpayers' money to renovate their UK home, Frogmore Cottage. Then as soon as it was finished, they quit as royals and moved to the United States. And some people familiar with the production of Archetypes and Harry's book tour said they were instructed to address the couple as sir or ma'am. And Meghan was happy to let little girls curtsy to her while she was on tour in Colombia. I'm a Republican. I would rather have a president than queens and princes. I mean, why are we still running the country like it's a Disney film with palaces and princesses? We might as well throw a few elves and dragons in there. Sometimes it's hard to tell if Britain is a country or erotic fan fiction, but even I thought that it was mega wanky that the interview with Oprah that threw the royals under the gold carriage came out while the famously dutiful and reticent Queen was tending to her dying husband Prince Philip. And Meghan didn't just moan about racism in that interview with Oprah. Meghan has played the race card harder than Jussie Smollett. Most hilariously, she claimed that one of the cast members of The Lion King had compared her to Nelson Mandela. She told a reporter that a South African actor in the stage show had pulled her aside. He looked at me and he's just like light. He said, I just need you to know, when you married into this family, we rejoiced in the streets the same we did when Mandela was freed from prison. I mean, even if that was true, who would say that about themselves? Walking around saying, well, of course, I get compared to Nelson Mandela a lot, and Jesus and Gary Lineker. And of course, it wasn't true. Someone did some digging. It turns out there was only one South African cast member for The Lion King, and he said he'd never met Meghan and had not attended that premiere. And nobody in South Africa gives a shit about these stupid self-promoting wazzicks. And Meghan's made-up anecdote didn't go down well with South Africans. When Harry and Meghan went to South Africa, the locals were less enamoured with them than in Meghan's fantasies. One woman wrote on a placard, Mandela spent 27 years behind bars in South Africa. Markle spent 18 months in castles and complained on TV during a pandemic. Why are they here? And the complaints about press racism were often a bit of a stretch. I mean, there was one headline that maybe went over the line, almost straight out of Compton. I mean, she wasn't dealing crack, she's from a nice middle-class family. And Meghan spoke about the challenges of being biracial in Hollywood, including being labelled as ethnically ambiguous and having her skin tone altered in photo shoots. But everyone has their skin tone edited in photo shoots. That's why Photoshop was invented. It's not racist, it's just because even beautiful women look like shit until a computer makes them sexy. And being biracial, that means you are ethnically ambiguous, which is fine. Pretty much every celebrity is ethnically ambiguous now. Look at Beyonce, Ariana Grande, Zendaya, Iggy Azalea Banks, the Kardashians. Everyone looks like they're from a sun-blushed land somewhere between Rome and Khartoum. Also, the thing about her being black, did anyone even know she was black until she started banging on about it? I mean, she's hardly George Foreman grill. Meghan herself seemed to pick and choose when to be black early in her career, telling a reporter she could identify as Caucasian to get more roles. If you're blonde and blue-eyed, you may have 10 auditions, but because I could look what they call exotic Caucasian, instead of having 10 auditions, I would have 40. And she even identified as Latina for some roles. This is from an article she wrote. I could audition for virtually any role, morphing from Latina when I was dressed in red to African American when in mustard yellow. My closet filled with fashionable frocks to make me look as racially varied as an 80s Benetton poster.
Most people didn't treat me like a black woman.
So she was happy to get the benefits of being ethnically ambiguous, but as soon as it became expedient to be black, she was black, jumping on the BLM bandwagon to make speeches on behalf of marginalised communities.
I wanted to say the right thing, and I was really nervous that I wouldn't, or that it would get picked apart, and I realized the only wrong thing to say is to say nothing. Because George Floyd's life mattered, and Breonna Taylor's life mattered, and Philando Castile's life mattered, and Tamir Rice's life mattered. And so did so many other people whose names we know and whose names we do not know. Stephon Clark, his life mattered.
That didn't always reflect the real-life actions of her and her husband. In November 2024, Meghan hosted a Thanksgiving dinner for Afghan women resettled in the US through one of the many millions of charities that her and Harry have set up. But it slightly glosses over the fact that Harry and Meghan made money from Harry bragging about shooting 25 Afghan soldiers when he was serving with the army. I mean, it's a bit awkward when none of the women are there with their husbands. Maybe Harry aerated one of them. To be honest, I miss that Harry. And Meghan famously complained about media intrusion, demanding privacy after stepping back from royal duties. Yet she and Harry can't seem to stay away from the spotlight. They've inked multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix, Spotify and book publishers to air their grievances, parade their private lives and criticise the royal family, who was famously mocked in South Park.
We want privacy! We want privacy!
A lack of privacy. You've got all the class and calibre of a $2 OnlyFans girl. You chose to be a princess. Royals are literally public property. And they film themselves kissing. Oh, look at Meghan desperately trying to ensure privacy by filming herself kissing Harry. Who does this? This is more desperate than those single mums who post on Facebook that they've checked into hospital but don't give any details so everyone thinks they're dying instead of just having some piles lasered off. Did their kid Archie consent to having his privacy invaded? When Meghan launched her Archewell Foundation and website, the site asked users for personal information, which is kind of at odds with Meghan's privacy concerns. And she said that the royals were giving them to the press. She said she wasn't just being thrown to the wolves as much as being fed to the wolves, which is actually the same thing, just at a different velocity. And this seems like a conspiracy theory to me. The press treatment of Meghan and Harry seemed quite tame considering how much of a pair of wankers they are, and when you consider that the royals have always operated under a miasma of scandal and ridicule. The Duke of Windsor buddied up with Nazis and moaned about the amount of money he got from the royals, even though it was worth about $2 million in today's money. Princess Margaret, the late Queen's sister, enjoyed a gin-soaked exile in the Caribbean, which was widely reported in the press. Prince Andrew's ex, Fergie, had her toes sucked by some bald guy, although it later turned out to not be the most stomach-turning sex story connected to him. Prince Edward organised a shambolic TV event called It's a Royal Knockout and then lashed out at the media afterwards.
There's been a tremendous team that have helped put this together. And I've lost my voice.
Are you pleased with the way things have gone, sir?
Can I finish? And I know the captains have enjoyed themselves. I only hope that you've enjoyed yourselves. Have you? Well, thanks for sounding so bloody enthusiastic. What have you been doing in here all day? Have you been watching it? Yeah. What did you think of it? Thanks.
I thought it was great.
He's walked out.
And Prince Andrew was busy mates with sex traffickers and paid off a woman who claimed she was given to him to have sex with when she was a teenager. And the press did not give him an easy ride, as they shouldn't. And the current king and queen were mercilessly mocked in the national press in the 90s after a call between them was leaked in which the then heir to the throne joked about being reincarnated as a tampon. And even now, King Charles is mocked for speaking to plants and campaigning for open borders, despite having a very substantial and well-guarded border around all his residences. And there's an ancient tradition of the heirs to the throne chucking it in the bin for an American slag. King Edward abdicated so he could be with Wallis Simpson. And loads of the press adored Harry and Meghan because they're a mixed-race couple and that was trendy at that time. And all the demands for the media to give them privacy and respect are just so Meghan and Harry can have a monopoly on revealing the sordid details of their private lives and the private lives of their families. In Prince Harry's tell-all memoir, Spare, he describes how he lost his virginity to an older woman who smacked my rump and used him not unlike a young stallion. And he then tells the reader how he got frostnip on his todger, which is a British word for penis. Although surprisingly, the frostbite was from a charity expedition to the North Pole and not from inserting it into Meghan. And Harry slams his family. Camilla is a Machiavellian villain. He describes her as dangerous and said she sacrificed me on her personal PR altar. Charles is described as a duffer who only valued Harry's birth as providing a spare to the throne. And Harry describes his brother William as his arch nemesis, possessing a familiar scowl and suffering from alarming baldness. Jeez, he's hardly one to talk. Get yourself to Turkey, mate. I know a guy. He also accused William of grabbing him by the collar and ripping his necklace. Necklace? Was he dressed in the Queen Mum's old gear? Did William also ladder your stockings, Harry? But when Harry's talking about Meghan, he says, she's perfect, she's perfect. Harry likes to pretend he's a victim in a gilded cage, but he seems to love all the perks that go along with the sacrifices, the money, the lifestyle, being booked to give pompous speeches. I mean, they could both disappear from the public eye, but then how would they make a living? Harry can't stop spending money on stupid court cases either. Harry accuses the offices of his brother, father and Camilla of briefing the press against them to distract or trade away negative stories about themselves. He sued the publisher of the Daily Mail for libel for publishing an article in 2022 that said that Harry was trying to conceal his efforts to obtain taxpayer-funded security, but the prince ultimately dropped the case and a judge ordered Harry to pay the Daily Mail's publisher nearly £50,000 in legal fees. Harry did a bit better with his invasion of privacy case against Sun publisher News Group newspapers, who were ordered to give him 10 million quid. There's also the lawsuit regarding state police protection for Harry and his family when they're in Britain, which Harry, Meghan and their older child Archie were stripped of when they left the UK in 2020. Harry says he's willing to pay for the security, but British state security isn't just something you can buy, and resources are stretched quite thin at the moment, what with the government insisting on importing as many Islamists as they can. And as well as the race card, Meghan's also played the mental health card. In the widely publicised interview with Oprah, Meghan revealed that she struggled with suicidal thoughts during her time as a working royal. She stated, "I just didn't want to be alive anymore." Did you, aye? Meghan alleged during the same interview that she sought help from the royal family but was denied support. "I went to the institution and I said that I needed to go somewhere to get help, and I was told that I couldn't, that it wouldn't be good for the institution." Bear in mind the royal family have probably the best private healthcare in Britain. There's no 7-year wait to be seen, and the royal family have a long history of crazy people, so it's not like there's no precedent. Or you could just walk out and go to any private clinic in London and pay for it with all the money you're getting to play at being a princess. Also, some of the claims seem a bit fake. She said she was isolated and suffering from extreme loneliness within the royal family. She also described a bustling social life and high-profile engagements at the same time. It's almost as if she's talking shite to get pity. Maybe Meghan's biggest hypocrisy is over the climate. As a Hollywood lefty, Meghan is contractually obliged to bang on about climate issues. Speaking about the wildfires in Southern California, she highlighted the importance of collective action in response to environmental crises. And speaking to the United Nations, she discussed the broader implications of climate change within the context of global issues affecting women.
Forcefully in a more inclusive, more just, and more empathetic direction, and to not only frame the debate, but to be in charge of the debate. On racial justice, on gender, climate change.
And she said, As global leaders convene for COP26 to commit to solutions for our climate crisis, all of us at Archewell, led by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, share our pledge towards a more sustainable future by becoming net zero by 2030. So, those are her words. What about her actions on the climate? Well, Harry and Meghan's 18,000 square foot mansion has 13 fireplaces. I mean, how much fire do you need? You got a big sack of marshmallows there? These guys love carbon emissions so much they've probably got a coal fire on their private jet. Harry set up this Travelist charity, which was all about not using private planes. But after attending a Global Citizen Live concert in 2021 aimed at urging action on climate change, they'd left New York for California on a private jet, which was estimated to produce 17 tons of carbon emissions just on that flight. And at the One Young World Summit in Manchester, Meghan gave the keynote address where she spoke about empowering young leaders to address climate change. And then they hopped on a private jet to a Katy Perry concert. In 2019, they took 4 private jet journeys within 11 days. But remember, reducing carbon emissions is just for the little people. If we all stop having fun and don't take our one Ryanair flight to Magaluf each year, the elites can continue hopping in a Learjet to see Katy Perry lip sync. Meghan lecturing us on carbon emissions is like getting lectured on childcare by Jimmy Savile. She's the Duchess of double standards, and all their talk of net zero and carbon offsetting is bunk. According to Greenpeace, carbon offsetting is a total scam. She's also a hypocrite over feminism. Meghan's speeches about female empowerment ring hollow when you consider her fame is based on looking sexy on TV and then marrying into an actual royal family. And she's always moulding issues to fit around her personal brand of empowering girls. You'd think she might want to try empowering girls in Rotherham, who need a bit of empowerment, but nah, the empowerment these United Nations types want is middle class girls writing emails about sexist adverts, just like Meghan did. At the United Nations Women Conference in 2015, she said,
It is said that girls with dreams become women with vision. May we empower each other to carry out such vision, because it isn't enough to simply talk about equality. One must believe in it. And it isn't enough to simply believe in it. One must work at it. Let us work at it together, starting now. Thank you so much.
Who sits through this bollocks? By the way, if you need a speaker for your event, I'm a public speaker now, and I can do you a banging 20 minutes on why the liberal establishment enabled grooming gangs or the rise of political Islam in Britain. Anyway, like I said, I fully support Harry and Meghan moving from being royals dependent on the taxpayer to making their own money. I see it as privatisation. I think all royals should be moved to a financially self-sustaining model like this. They launched Archewell, an entertainment non-profit, and it's just as well it's non-profit because the profits have dried up. People were chucking money at them in the beginning. They got a $100 million partnership with Netflix, a $25 million contract with Spotify, and a $20 million contract for Harry's autobiography Spare. The first Netflix show, imaginatively titled Harry and Meghan, was a roaring success because it was just dishing the dirt on the royal family. But once you've flogged that carcass to death, where do you go? Well, they produced a 2023 Netflix docuseries called Heart of Invictus, which significantly underperformed Harry and Meghan because people are less interested in a po-faced worthy documentary about charity than they are about the royal family tearing itself apart. The Spotify podcast Archetypes took 2 years to appear. Hey, it can be hard setting up a podcast. You've got the microphones, you've got the laptop. Actually, it's a piece of piss. Anyone could do it in half an hour. When Archetypes landed, it wasn't the smash hit that they hoped for. Every podcast needs a theme, and Meghan's was discussing the history of stereotypes that get levelled against women to investigate, dissect, and subvert the labels that try to hold women back. Doesn't sound quite as compelling as Harry telling us about the time Randy Andy came back to Windsor Castle drunk in blackface with 2 teenage girls and did a shit in the moat. Spotify dumped them, and the Spotify executive Bill Simmons called them grifters on his own podcast.
I'm going to pose this question to you. You do a lot of business deals, a lot of negotiations.
I do?
Well, let's just...
I wish I had been involved in the Meghan and Harry leave Spotify negotiation. The fucking grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them. I got to get drunk one night and tell the story of the Zoom I had with Harry to try to help him with a podcast idea.
They had some bonkers ideas for podcasts too. Harry wanted to host a series where he interviewed powerful men like Mark Zuckerberg, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump with the angle that their experiences made them into sociopaths. The question of why the most powerful men in the world would want to come on his podcast and confess to being sociopaths while digging up personal trauma didn't seem to occur to him. And their charities seem to be floundering too, after raising more than $13 million in 2021. According to public disclosure forms, the charity grossed $2 million in 2022. But there was a moment of awkwardness when it was declared delinquent in May 24 by California's Registry of Charities and Fundraisers for failing to submit required annual reports and registration fees on time. The excuse for this was lazier than the podcasting. The check was lost in the post. As someone who's spent a lot of time dealing with comedy promoters, I can assure you that this is bollocks. Who's still using checks? What are you, a Victorian ghost? Everything's online now. Well, panicking, Meghan rejoined Instagram to announce money-making scheme American Riviera Orchard. This is a home goods and sundries line that sounds like something you'd get in the middle aisle in Lidl, next to the kayaks and blowtorches. It hasn't actually got anything you can buy though, and according to posh tittle-tattle rag, Tatler may not be able to launch at all, as the name has been challenged by existing company Royal Riviera, which does fancy gift boxes. The launch of American Riviera Orchard, which sounds like the name of Gwyneth Paltrow's kids, is supposed to be accompanied by a cookery and lifestyle show called With Love, Meghan. Thing is, can she actually cook? She's just famous for noshing off a ginger prince. She doesn't have a chain of restaurants. She's not a Michelin-starred chef. It's like, I'm a comedian. The one thing I'm good at is the one thing I've spent 20 years perfecting. That's crushing a room. I was the weekend headliner for the Comedy Store before I got cancelled. And you get actors and celebrities coming along to stand up thinking, anyone can do it. I can be a stand-up comedian. And it's like being a welder or being a nurse. There's a ton of stuff you need to learn. There's a lot of technical stuff and a lot of stuff that's like surfing. You can't learn it in a book. You can only learn it by dying on your arse night after night in the upstairs room of crappy pubs in London. But no, Meghan thinks she can suddenly just rock up and be Nigella Lawson. Do you know how much time and effort Nigella Lawson put in before she started putting her finger in some toffee sauce and gently smearing it around her areola while talking about spotted dick? That's an art form. You can't learn it overnight. Meghan doesn't have a chef's pedigree to rely on, so the show needs her Hollywood connections more than ever. Being a royal got Meghan fame and connections who all seem completely fake and completely exploitable.
Beyonce just texted. Really not.
Shut up.
Just checking in.
Just checking in. Just casual.
I still can't believe she knows who I am.
Gonna call her.
No, it's okay. She said she wants me to feel safe and protected. She admires and respects my bravery and vulnerability, and she thinks I was selected to break generational curses that need to be healed.
It's well said.
Nobody says stuff like this to a real friend. The thing is, being royalty gave them a special kind of celebrity because there are lots of millionaires, lots of big YouTubers, but precious few actual real life princesses. Now the castle has pulled up its drawbridge and Meghan is mortal again. She's just a small bit social media influencer. Hollywood has lost interest. According to a former Spotify employee, many celebrities approached to appear on Archetypes turned it down, including Taylor Swift, Beyonce and Megan Thee Stallion, which is a shame because I was looking forward to hearing how Megan Thee Stallion talking about her wet ass pussy is a strident blow for feminism and pushing boundaries for girls. The only part of the business that's doing well is suing the press. Harry made a lot of money from intruding on his family's privacy and then made even more money from suing people who intruded on his privacy. I do understand Harry not liking the press. After all, his mum was killed by not wearing a seatbelt and getting in a car with a drunk driver who was full of drugs. Hey, I'm just saying. Another reason their businesses might be flailing is that Meghan sounds like a nightmare to work for. Former staffers have accused Meghan of being cold and withholding, creating a really awful workplace atmosphere. This isn't new. While she was at the palace, Meghan was accused of fostering a clique-like environment where certain individuals were given preferential treatment while others felt excluded. Meghan was accused of ignoring or dismissing advice from experienced royal aides, which some staff found frustrating and disempowering. Look, there's nothing wrong with bullying. I've been accused of bullying. There are a lot of crybabies around, and frankly, all the people who moan about getting bullied by Meghan say they wanted to work with her because they wanted to do good, and anyone who wants to do good deserves everything they get. But this report in Vanity Fair is quite damning. Meghan's own relationships with employees tended to follow a familiar pattern. She would be warm and effusive at the beginning, engendering an atmosphere of professional camaraderie. When something went poorly, often due to Meghan and Harry's own demands, such as a teaser for Archetypes being released 5 months before the show premiered and before there was any tape to promote, Meghan would become cold and withholding towards the person she perceived to be responsible. The source says it was really awful, very painful, because she's constantly playing checkers. I'm not even going to say chess, but she's very aware of where everyone is on her board, and when you're not in, you are to be thrown to the wolves at any given moment. In practice, they say that manifested as undermining. It's talking behind your back. It's gnawing at your sense of self, really like Mean Girls teenager. 2 sources say a colleague with ties to Archetypes took a leave of absence after working on 3 episodes. Several others described taking extended breaks from work to escape scrutiny, exiting their job, or undergoing long-term therapy after working with Meghan. And get a load of this confession by Meghan while chatting to her friend Mindy Kaling.
All-girls Catholic school for middle school and high school. Great school. But I never had anyone to sit with at lunch. I was always a little bit of a loner and really shy and didn't know where I fit in. And so I was like, okay, well then I'll become the president of the multicultural club and the president of sophomore class and the president of this and French club. And by doing that, I had meetings at lunchtime.
Right. Wow.
So I didn't have to worry about who I would sit with or what I would do because I was always so busy.
Right.
See, that's how these woke fucks are. They can't get any friends, so they use bureaucracy and rules to force themselves into power. They're like school shooters, but with horrible social engineering instead of bullets. The fact that Vanity Fair is publishing an excoriating takedown of Meghan is very revealing. She's fallen out with the media. Vanity Fair were the woke, womany side of the media that were cheerleaders for Meghan. They published a glowing write-up of Meghan and Harry back in 2017. 8 years on, and Vanity Fair are running this article, American Hustle, condemning the pair. Contributing editor Anna Peel spoke to dozens of sources connected to the duo who labelled the Sussexes as the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet. And Harry and Meghan do seem to be losing authenticity. They hop from one humanitarian issue to another, exploiting it to keep their name in the public eye, which they hate, of course, because they crave privacy. After the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan and the earthquake in Haiti, Meghan and Harry issued statements expressing their heartbreak and urging support for humanitarian efforts. When California wildfires struck, Meghan and Harry made sure to hand out sandwiches and hug some peons in front of paparazzi with all the subtlety of a politician kissing a baby. It's all for show. They're disaster tourists, and there was a scandal when it was revealed that they were flown around Nigeria for one of their pretend royal tours by Dr. Alan Onyema, CEO of Airpeace, who is wanted in the US for $20 million money laundering and bank fraud scheme. And their compassion is selective. Meghan decided to postpone her Netflix cooking show With Love, Meghan, due to wildfires in Los Angeles, claiming sensitivity to those affected. But she had no issue with airing other projects during times of personal or royal crises, like the Oprah interview that went out when Prince Philip was ill. They've also fallen out with their neighbours in Montecito, as detailed in the same Vanity Fair article. The prince and the starlet, as the Montecitan calls her, have become local villains, according to several people who spoke with Vanity Fair, attributing increased housing prices and tourist influx to their presence. They moved away from England to get away from the scrutiny of the press, and all they do is try to get in the press in the United States. And Meghan fell out with her family too. Her relationship with her father, Thomas Markle, has been tumultuous, to say the least. He staged paparazzi photos before her wedding and later gave interviews criticising her, which led to public scrutiny and family drama. And her half-sister was apparently part of a hate group that coordinated attacks on social media against her. I mean, falling out with one family could be forgiven, but if you fall out with Harry's family, your own family, the Ponzi left-wing press who used to lick your bumhole, your staff, your neighbours, Hollywood, your business partners, it starts to look like the problem might be you, Meghan. In summary, Meghan embodies the archetype of Hollywood hypocrisy. She's a woke elitist preaching values she doesn't practice herself while leveraging made-up victimhood and privilege to maintain relevance. But mainly, we hate her because she ruined Harry. She did to the royal family what Yoko Ono did to the Beatles. Instead of being po-faced and lecturing us on our language, he used racial language himself, but in the context of being friends with the people he was talking talking about instead of elevating himself above them. He was a real guy. Then Meghan came along and turned him into a wanker. And look, I think they love each other and they've got nice kids, but man, just be happy with what you've got. I'm not a princess or a millionaire, and every day that I wake up with my family, I feel like I've won the lottery. I think the end of wokeism might actually be exactly what Meghan Markle needs. The most telling quote was when she said she didn't have friends at school, so she took control of the school's bureaucratic do-gooding institutions to fill that void in her life and force people through sheer authority and virtue signalling to have to socialise with her. So that's who Meghan Markle is. If you're like me and you wonder who you really are and where you belong, you've got to try MyHeritage. And the best part, you get a 14-day free trial. Just use my link, it's below. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you want to support me making these videos, you can become a patron and get exclusive content and early access and stuff. And I get money, which is great because I love money so much. And also, I reinvest Patreon money in kit to make these videos. Okay, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye-bye.